The Galactic Empire believed themselves untouchable. Their warships dominated the stars, their rule was law, and their enemies were crushed under the weight of their power. When they raised the human colony of Seraph 9, they thought it was just another footnote in their ever-growing list of conquests. 1,000 human lives extinguished in moments. A warning to all who would dare resist. But they made a grave miscalculation. Among the dead were the children of Celine Arden. Celine had been many things before she had become a mother. A soldier, a strategist, a ghost in the Empire's archives, her name erased after she had defected from their ranks decades prior. She had left that life behind, choosing instead to raise her children in peace, far from the war-torn expanse of known space. But peace was never an option under the Empire's rule. When she received the transmission, the cold, impersonal report of Seraph 9's destruction, something inside her shattered. She did not mourn as others did. There were no tears, no wails of despair. Only silence, sharp and cold, as she pieced together what must come next. Retribution. Celine did not have a fleet. She did not command an army. But she had something far more dangerous, knowledge. She had once served as an imperial tactician, orchestrating battles that toppled entire civilizations. She knew the Empire's weaknesses, its blind spots, the cracks in its indomitable facade. And she had nothing left to lose. She resurfaced in the lawless sectors first, gathering a force from the remnants of those the Empire had wronged. Smugglers, mercenaries, deserters, she gave them a cause, a plan, and a leader who knew exactly how to dismantle the beast that had devoured their worlds. They struck like phantoms. Imperial supply routes vanished overnight, shipyards fell silent, high-ranking officials found themselves assassinated in their own strongholds. The Empire's vast intelligence network struggled to pin down the source of the attacks. They blamed terrorists, insurgents, rival factions. But whispers spread in the dark corners of the galaxy, rumors of a woman who fought not for conquest, but for vengeance. A mother who had declared war on the Empire itself. By the time they realized who she was, it was too late. Celine did not march on the capital with an armada. She did not challenge the Empire in a grand battle of fleets. She did something far worse. She crippled them from within. By the time her final strike came, the Empire was already bleeding. Their infrastructure was collapsing, their warlords turning on one another in paranoia and desperation. She did not need to set foot on their throne world, the war had already been won before they knew they were losing. And when the Emperor himself, the man who had signed the order that had killed her children, finally begged for mercy, she gave him the only answer she had left. The same mercy he had shown her family. None at all. The Empire had always underestimated humanity. To them, humans were an annoyance, a minor species that had managed to carve out a place among the stars through sheer stubbornness. But the day they executed 1,000 human colonists on Valtrex-9, they sealed their fate. Among the dead was a boy named Daniel, barely 6 years old. His mother, Admiral Celine Carter, received the transmission of his final moments. The Empire had broadcasted the massacre as a warning. Instead, they had awoken a force that would shake the very foundations of their rule. Celine was not a woman of half measures. A decorated strategist and ruthless tactician, she had led humanity's fleets in countless skirmishes. But this was different. This was personal. She gathered her forces, calling in every favor, every hidden fleet, every rogue operative. Still loyal to her, she did not march to war with grand speeches or political maneuvering. She came as a mother seeking vengeance. The war was no longer about territory or politics. It was about pain, the kind of pain that burns planets and shatters empires. Her first strike was against the Imperial stronghold on Darren V. No survivors. The second, the military headquarters on Xylos Prime. No prisoners. The third, the Emperor's flagship itself. With each strike, she sent a message. You took my son. You took my people. Now I take everything. The Empire, vast and arrogant, soon realized it had made a mistake. Celine Carter was not merely a grieving mother. She was a force of destruction, relentless and unyielding. Their fleets crumbled. Their generals fell. Their colonies burned. As the war escalated, Celine used unconventional tactics. She turned imperial citizens against their rulers, exposing the corruption and cruelty of the regime. She infiltrated their systems, sowing dissent and rebellion. The empire, once a monolith of power, fractured from within. It was not just humanity fighting now. The oppressed species of the galaxy, long subjugated under imperial rule, saw Celine as a beacon of resistance. They rose up, striking at the weakened empire like wolves sensing a wounded beast. The empire's response was desperate. They sent their most ruthless warlords to crush Celine's forces. They deployed biological weapons, scorched entire planets, and executed anyone suspected of aiding her. But for every act of cruelty, Celine retaliated tenfold. She captured the Imperial High Council, broadcasting their executions live across the galaxy. She dismantled the Emperor's secret police, turning their own spies against them. She exposed the Empire's darkest secrets, eroding their authority until even their loyalists questioned their rule. In the final days, as Celine's fleet surrounded the Imperial capital, the Emperor sent a desperate plea for peace. Celine responded with a single transmission. Peace was never an option. The bombardment lasted for 3 days. When the dust settled, the once mighty empire was no more. Celine stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking down at the ruins of a civilization that had stolen everything from her. She had won, but victory did not bring peace to her heart. She turned to her officers. We rebuild, not for vengeance, but for those we lost. The war had ended, but her fight was far from over. The galaxy needed a new order, one built on justice, not tyranny. And Celine Carter would ensure that no empire would ever rise to power through blood and oppression again. The empire believed itself invincible. Its fleets spanned the galaxy, its armies crushed rebellion with ruthless efficiency, and its rulers sat in their gilded palaces, secure in their belief that no force could challenge them. They were wrong. The massacre on Korthos III was meant to be a lesson. 1,000 human colonists, men, women, and children, were executed for daring to resist imperial rule. The empire expected fear. What they received was war. Her name was Celine Ardent. Once, she had been a soldier, a strategist, a leader of men. But when the empire took her children, she became something else. Something far worse. Celine did not seek vengeance blindly. No, she was far too methodical for that. She did not lash out in anger, did not throw herself against the empire's might. Instead, she planned, she studied, and when she struck, she did so with precision and fury. Her first target was the Imperial outpost on Verdun Prime. A small installation, lightly defended, but crucial for supply lines in the sector. It was reduced to smoldering ruin in a single night. The Empire dismissed it as an isolated terrorist attack. Then, the shipyards of Yelvos burned, and an imperial governor was found dead in his palace, his throat cut with the precision of a scalpel. Celine gathered others to her cause. Former soldiers, smugglers, revolutionaries. Word spread like wildfire. The mother of the fallen had declared war. The empire sent bounty hunters, then assassins, then entire battalions. None succeeded. Celine was always ahead, always striking where they least expected. The true turning point came when she stole the dreadnought Harbinger. A ship of war, meant to instill fear in imperial enemies, now bore her banner. With it, she shattered an entire fleet at the Battle of Tenebrae's Rift. The Empire was forced to acknowledge her as more than a mere terrorist. She had become a force of nature. For years, she waged her war, tearing through imperial lines, dismantling their dominion piece by piece. She became legend, whispered of in the halls of power, feared even by the emperor himself. They called her the Phantom Queen, the Wrath of the Fallen, the Mother of War. And in the end, as her forces stormed the imperial capital, as the emperor himself stood before her, trembling in the throne room that had once seemed untouchable, she whispered only one thing. "This is for my children." Then, the empire burned. The empire never expected retribution to come in the form of a single woman. They had eradicated an entire human colony, 1,000 men, women, and children, without hesitation. It was meant to be a warning to humanity, a show of force to break their will. But instead, it created something far worse, a mother without mercy. She was called Serafina Kale, once a diplomat, a voice of reason among the warring factions. But when the empire executed her people, she became something else entirely. Her heart, once filled with compassion, hardened into steel. She did not weep. She did not plead. She simply disappeared. For months, the empire dismissed the rumors. Stories of a lone woman infiltrating supply lines, dismantling entire regiments, turning the very machines of war against their masters. They laughed at the whispers of an avenging ghost, believing it nothing more than rebel propaganda. Then, their warships began to vanish. At first, it was a destroyer. A freak accident, they claimed. Then an entire fleet went dark. Sabotage, they murmured, but no one could trace the culprit. The whispers grew louder. The woman who fought like an army. The mother who would not die. Serafina had no home, no army, no fleet, only the pain of loss and a mind sharpened by vengeance. She turned the Empire's own technology against them. She struck at their shipyards, their fuel depots, their strategic strongholds. Her knowledge of diplomacy had given her an intimate understanding of their weaknesses, and she exploited every single one. The Empire, unshaken by planetary rebellions, now found itself haunted by a singular force of destruction. The Grand Sovereign himself ordered her capture, offering rewards beyond imagination. Yet, none could bring her down. The best assassins failed. The most elite soldiers fell. And then, one day, she reached their homeworld. By the time the Empire realized what was happening, it was too late. Their orbital defenses had been turned inward. Their dreadnoughts, reprogrammed, bombarded their own capital. The sky, once a symbol of their supremacy, burned with the fury of a mother's wrath. Serafina stood amidst the ruins of the imperial palace, her gaze unflinching as the Grand Sovereign lay before her, wounded, broken, begging. "You killed 1,000 of my children," she whispered. "So I took your empire." With a final shot, she silenced him. The war did not end that day, but the message was clear: humanity would never break. And no empire, no matter how vast, could stand against the vengeance of a mother. The Empire of Zalzir had believed itself untouchable. With fleets spanning the stars and soldiers bred for war, they ruled through fear and strength. Their latest conquest had been the human colony of New Kairos, a thriving settlement on the fringes of their expanding territory. The Zalzir expected swift surrender, a mere formality. Instead, they met resistance. Furious, they retaliated. They executed 1,000 civilians, men, women, and children, broadcasting the atrocity as a warning to humanity. They did not know about Cassandra Vale. Cassandra had once been an admiral of the Terran Defense Fleet, a brilliant tactician and a mother of two. She had retired to New Kairos, believing she had finally earned peace. But when she returned from an off-world trip to find the streets lined with the bodies of her people, her children among them, something inside her snapped. The Zalzir did not fear humans. But they would learn to fear her. She did not grieve. She did not beg. She prepared. Gathering the remnants of New Cairo's survivors, pirates, mercenaries, and rogue AI constructs, Cassandra forged an army in the shadows. She struck in surgical precision, dismantling supply lines, sabotaging warships, and turning the Empire's own technology against them. Her forces disrupted hyperspace lanes, assassinated high-ranking officials, and sowed terror in the hearts of Zalzir commanders. They called her the Pale Fury, a specter of vengeance. Stories spread of entire garrisons vanishing overnight, of ships drifting lifeless through space, their crews reduced to whispers on the comms. The Empire, once dismissive, now scrambled for defense. Then Cassandra took it further. With stolen warships and repurposed Zalzir technology, she bypassed the Empire's core defenses, striking their capital world itself. She unleashed devastation upon their high command, walking through the ruins clad in stolen Zalzir armor, her voice ringing through their broken halls. "This is for my children." When the dust settled, the Empire was broken. A regime that had lasted centuries was left in ruins, its rulers executed, its people now the ones whispering in fear. The war did not end with a treaty. It ended with Cassandra Vale standing atop the wreckage of an empire, staring at a sky that once belonged to her enemies. And in the silence, she whispered the names of the 1,000. The empire had taken their lives. But Cassandra had taken the war to their doorstep, and burned their legacy to the ground.